to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please join me for a moment of silence. Thank you. You may be seated. First up on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. I'll move it.
Second.
Any comments, amendments? Okay. All right. Motion by Bittinger, second by Dietrich. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, say nay. Motion passes 5-0. And just so the public knows, we do have Supervisor Mark Nelson on the phone with us. He went home a little early to make sure to get home through the snow, so I'm glad you're on the phone, Mark. Next up is the consent agenda. Items 2 through 7 constitute a routine action. Consent agenda consists of a routine action items to be considered by one motion. Items pass unanimously unless a separate vote is requested by a board member. Number 2 is approval of the minutes from the February 25th, 2025 meeting and approval of the minutes from the February 25th, 2025 special meeting. Number 3 is approval of the claims. Number 4 from County Treasurer Tina Bertrand is approval of property tax refund for parcel ending in 8004 in the amount of $2,477. And item B is approval of tax property refund for parcel ending in 2016 in the amount of $802. Number 5 from Deputy Commissioner of Elections Steve Hoffmeyer is to receive the appointment of Kevin Ranking as the trustee of the Rutland Township. Number 6 from Human Resources, Melissa Thomas, approval of memorandum of personnel transactions. And lastly, from Board Administration, Karen James, approval to lift the tax suspension for FO. Any comments, concerns, questions? All right, I'll move it.
Second.
All right, motion by Bittinger, second by Carper. All in favor, say aye.
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 Motion passes 5-0. All right. Going on to number 8 from Communication Center with Travis Chipperly. It's the approval of the tower site lease amendment agreement.
Hey, good afternoon. Travis Zipperly from the Woodbury County Communications Center. Coming to get approval and action on the fifth lease amendment from Singular Wireless, also known as AT&T, at the West Tower that sits by West High School, West Middle School. They lease space for their equipment. They approached the Starcom board for rent reduction. Their reasoning was to come in alignment with their business needs. The Starcom board did approve the $125 reduction in a month reduction.
Okay.
They originally wanted a 5% increase every 5 years, but we declined that and said, no, it needs to stay at 10% increase every 5 years, just like the rest of our vendors get. So
Okay.
this was going into effect March 1st, which has since passed, but just asking for your action and approval.
Okay. All right. Any questions, comments? Okay. All right. I'll move to approve the resolution and sign the lease agreement.
Second.
All right. Motion by Bittinger, second by Dietrich. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. All opposed, say nay. Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, sir. All right. We are a few moments ahead of our set time. So with that, I'm going to ask Laura Severs to come up from Secondary Roads. And number A is the award the bid for project Bros 5F97 to the low bidder Graves Construction Company, Inc., and approve the resolution directing the county engineer to sign the contracts once proper paperwork is presented by the contractor. Go ahead, Laura.
Yeah, this project came in under bid, which is always a good thing. I think we have some bridge contractors that are excited for work. So this is the bridge that is east of Pearson on L25. It does get some regular travel. We have usually about 200, 300 vehicles across it a day. So we had two bidders, Graves Construction and Dixon Construction. Graves Construction came in with a total bid of $751,517.95. Dixon Construction came in with a bid of $770,180.05.
Okay. Any board questions or comments? All right, with that, I'll move approval of awarding Graves Construction Company the contract bid for, in the amount of $751,517.95, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Second.
All right, motion by Bittinger, second by Carper. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Mark, you there?
Yes, I said aye. Can you hear me?
And I can hear you, okay. All right, thank you. All right, motion passes 5-0. And B is approve county pledge for Woodbury County for support for the NACE State Director position.
Right, so NACE is, all the counties, engineers in the United States have this organization that lobbies, informs, decision makers about what we do and why we, need funding and kind of the health of what county roads, secondary roads are. And so our state has 2 directors. They're filling one of the positions. It's something that I think that I'd do very well at, so I'd ask the board to support me with that. There is no financial, if anything, I go to the annual meeting for free, so maybe a little bit in reduction in that, but
Okay. Well, we would love to have you represent Woodbury County.
yeah.
So, all right, any other questions? I'll move the approval of that.
Second.
Okay. Motion by Bittinger, second by Nelson. All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. All right, thank you, Laura. Laura, do you need these back or should I give them to Michelle? Oh, yeah. Okay. Thank you. All right, well, we're almost at our still set time, so we got a couple more minutes. With that, let's go on to the budget review. We'll begin, from myself, is just talking with our auditor and just looking at ways to reduce the levy. And normally, we do bring over sometimes lost funds and from gaming funds to help lower the debt service. And so that's what's before us, is just to talk about before we send out the max tax levy to the public. We just wanted to see how much we wanted to bring over, if any at all. And so, Michelle, could you give us what are, I know they were in the packet, I don't have it before me, I apologize, but what are our levels, our balances on those, please?
While I pull this up, I think we'll probably get to the 440
Yeah, okay.
time. So
Sure. we can
I'm
do
not
that.
sure if this was in the homework packet or it was last week, but are
It
you
was last
looking
week,
for
yeah.
you're looking for the end of fiscal year 26, what we'll have remaining in reserves?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, specifically, what's in lost funds and gaming?
Right
Yeah,
now?
Yeah,
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
yeah. What was in the packet? I think that was in the packet. Was that last week or 2 weeks ago?
Well, what we had in there was what would be remaining at the end of fiscal year, the highlighted part at the bottom. So it was
Okay.
an estimated beginning balance, and that's taken into account all of the allocations
okay.
thus far
Okay.
and anticipated revenue. And then anything allocated from the budget hearings, and then the remaining balance is what we anticipate would be remaining in the reserves.
Okay, perfect, okay. Thank you.
To be continued.
Yeah, to be continued, right. I'll make sure I'm clear on that, all right. All right, so with that brings us to our 4:40 set time from County Treasurer Tina Bertrand. A is the public hearing on the authorization of a loan agreement and the issuance of notes to evidence the obligation of the county thereunder. So with that, we'll open up the public hearing. If anyone want to come speak about this is for our CIP loans for fiscal year 25. If anyone from the public here can speak for or against this. All right, hearing none or seeing any public, anybody moving to the podium, I would move to close the public hearing on this.
Second.
All right, motion by Bittinger, second by Dietrich. All in favor, say aye.
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 All right, motion passes 5-0. On to B is the approval of resolution instituting procedures to take additional action for the issuance of not to exceed $700,000 taxable general obligation capital loan notes. And that, turn over to Tina.
Good evening, gentlemen. Tina Bertrand, Woodbury County Treasurer. We talked about this a couple weeks ago when we were setting the public hearing. This is for the FY25 capital improvement projects. So basically, this is IT stuff throughout the county. There was some, I guess, some masonry work or tucking point on one of the buildings out, I think, in St. Climbing Hills. Kenny might have better information than I do on that. But essentially, that's just what these are, projects that have already been approved, and the methodology. We had to break them up just because of the types of projects that were.
Correct. Okay. All right, any questions from the board or concerns on these from anybody? Okay, all right, hearing none, I will move to approve.
Second.
All right, motion by Bittinger, second by Carper. All in favor, say aye.
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 All right, all opposed say nay. Motion passes 5-0. All right, we have a few more moments before our 4:45 set time. And so with that, we'll go back to item number 11A, the approval to transfer of lost funds in gaming. In our lost total right now, that after allocations, all that, at $711,560. And then for gaming, we have $663,317. So loss is $711,560, gaming $663,317. So this is just for discussion for the board, just if we want to transfer any of these funds that we have in years past to help offset the debt service levy and before we send out that max tax levy mailer. So just wanted to see what you guys wanted to do and on this, so we'll open up for discussion.
Is there any part of this that can go to general basic?
The gaming revenues can go to general basic. The lost revenue can go to debt service, which would indirectly allow for more for the general supplemental or rural supplemental.
Okay.
Good question, yeah. Okay.
And the gaming can basically go anywhere,
Correct,
including
right,
general basic.
Right. Mhm. Right.
Have we identified areas where we could allocate up to, say, $700,000 of lost funds? Is that an option?
Go ahead, Michelle, I'll let you know.
We have not done that, but it would be an option. As far as the maximum amount, we'll need that tonight. So lost can be used, other counties have used it for IT upgrades, election equipment, department vehicles, courthouse wiring upgrades, new lawnmowers at the courthouse, safety equipment at secondary roads, bulletproof vests for the sheriff's office, gravel at secondary roads, and upgrades to the jail. So those are basically some items that other counties have used to offset their general basic fund expenditures.
All right, with that, let's put a pause on that. We are now at our 4:45 set time. So with that, item C, 9C is the public hearing on the authorization of a loan agreement and new issuance of notes to evidence the obligation of the county thereunder. And so with that, I'll open up the public hearing for our CIP loan. Anyone wishes from the public to come speak for or against this? If you've traveled through the weather, I know Melissa, you probably want to come speak. Yeah, again, yeah, I know. All right. Anyone from the public? All right, hearing none or seeing no one move to the podium, I would move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion by Bittinger, second by Dietrich to close the public hearing. All in favor, say aye.
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 Motion passes 5-0. And item D is the approval of resolution instituting proceedings to take additional action for the issuance of not to exceed $500,000 taxable general obligation capital loan notes. And I'll turn that over to Tina.
Thank you again, gentlemen. Tina Bertrand, Woodbury County Treasurer. This is the second portion of the the capital improvement loans for FY '25. It's generally going to be the work associated with the demolition of the LEC, the old LEC. Because of the type of work, this was recommended by our bond counsel to be able to break them up into two separate issuance. But it's all essentially the same, it's basically all the same loan.
Same, all right.
Yeah, I think
Yep.
the only thing that I noticed on the agenda item is to approve the pre-levy authorization for the 1.2 million. I think, Michelle, you had that in your budget numbers. So this was a twofold one. One was to approve the resolution to take action to issuance not to exceed the $500,000, and then to do the pre-levy authorization issuance for the $1.2 million. It's a three-step parcel. Basically, it's the 700,000, 500,000, and then the total amount, which has the pre-levy amount. Right? I'm sorry. Nobody else can see me.
Yeah, the pre-levy amount is the first payment of the $1.2 million, and that's what actually gets included in the fiscal year '26 budget, is the principal and interest for the first payment. So that's always in this pre-levy documentation, and then I think around May or June, we get the official documentation that indicates that pre-levy amount, and
Okay.
then the rest of the amortization schedule.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Any further questions by the board? All right. Hearing none, I'll move to approve the resolution.
Second.
All right, motion by Bittinger, second by Carper. All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 All right, motion passes 5-0.
Michelle, I just have one question
Yep,
for the
go
auditor.
ahead.
Do they need to have two motions, or is one sufficient?
Joshua, can you advise with the pre-levy and if they should have a second motion or?
If they need a second motion, they have to come back a different day because it's not listed on the agenda. So there's not the option of having a second motion at this point.
Was this researched, Karen, to see how it was in the past?
Let's say it's actually on my agenda item.
So it was
So my
in the
ag-
homework as
so
a
my
motion
agenda-
recommendation?
My agenda item did have it, though, when I submitted it.
For the background material had the motion recommendation in there.
The backup material is not technically part of the agenda. Doesn't get posted out on the bulletin board. It's supporting materials for the agenda. So I don't know if, if there's a motion that needs to be made. I don't know if there's any prejudice in waiting another week or not, but it's not on the agenda tonight, so it's not something that we can add at this point.
Is that going to impact you?
We'll look at getting that added for next week,
Yep.
and we'll talk to our resources to find out, look at what was on the agenda when Dennis did it last year, and it should duplicate that, and if it didn't, then we'll make sure that
Yeah.
happens.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Tina. And yeah, I'll work with our board office. We'll get that for the agenda for next week. I'll look into that with Karen. We'll look into that and get that taken care of. Let me just write that down. Okay. Going back to 11A, it's just the approval of these lost funds or gaming funds. This is something we can do tonight. If not, we can come back to this. We could postpone it until next week. It's not going to necessarily affect us for tonight, but we were just looking, before we send out the max tax levies, if we wanted to add anything to lower that. But if we needed more time to think, if we wanted to look at some of these other areas that was listed, Matthew, what you asked about with lost funds, I mean, we can,
So it does or it does not affect the max publication?
it would only affect in the sense that we could lower what's being printed, but it wouldn't, go ahead, Michelle, I know maybe you can say it a different way, or maybe more accurately.
So let's just look at one at a time. If we look at local option sales tax and you choose to transfer X amount of dollars to debt service, the debt service levy will go down. And the general supplemental can remain the same at the maximum that it is,
Right.
which means that the levy would go down slightly.
Right.
With gaming, if that were moved to general supplemental, the levy will go down. If it's moved anywhere else, the levy will not go down. But the other issue of the budget is the deficit that we have of expenses versus revenue, in that we're about 2 million over on the general basic fund, which would have to come from reserves, which is already very low. So even though it wouldn't affect the levy, there's going to be an issue with coming up with the money for the general basic, because it would have to come from reserves unless something else is done to reduce that deficit.
Right. So what I put on the agenda was tonight is before we send out the mailer, if we wanted to kind of lessen the max, we could do that before we send the mailer out, or we could do it next week and it would still begin to lower the rates down. But I just wanted to give us that option tonight before we send out the mailer if we wanted to do this. So that's why it's on the agenda.
Well, and it might be
Yeah.
helpful
Because
to
we can-
see.
Go ahead, Mark.
I was just saying, we can do this at any time. It doesn't have to be done before the tax asking, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Because if this is done, it will lower. It will lower. We can't raise, as we always say, but we can lower after this
Correct.
point. And if it would be helpful to look at where we're at before you make these considerations in the miscellaneous review, I don't know if we can move this item
We could postpone until next week.
afterwards.
Yeah, we could,
And then, well, then it wouldn't be included in the mailing.
correct.
Because regardless of what's done afterwards, the mailing's going to create questions, and individuals are going to believe that that is what's
Right.
going to happen with the levies.
Right. Right. Yeah, I'm open to either.
So
Go.
so my thoughts on this, Dan and I talked about this when we met with Michelle last week, and these funds are unique in that the local option, we've used that to promote economic development ideas in the county and fund groups that are a part of that. I think that's a very positive thing. The gaming at times has really saved the county's bacon when we've had emergency expenses and that sort of thing. And so one of the concerns that I have is that with these cuts that we have to make, specifically to general basic as a result of House File 718, is our departments are already cutting things out that they probably would have replaced had we not had to make the cuts. And so I'm concerned about taking some of that gaming money to offset cuts when some of those departments may come back with a surprise type expenditure that resulted in them not doing a normal replacement, say of a vehicle or something in a building, things of that nature. So I would just kind of caution if the board decides to move some money from gaming to general basic, that it's not very much, and that we leave a pretty nice cushion in there in case there most likely there will be some sort of emergency expenditure. And then likewise with local option sales tax, I would just caution, going to debt service I think is a good thing. Anytime paying debt down is a good thing, just as long as we're not adding new debt or expenditures over the top of that. There's, I kind of see that local option as kind of like that slush fund. That's a great way that we can help bolster communities with their projects, not just use it to pad our budget, I guess, so to speak. So I would just kind of be cautious of some of those things. It's unfortunate that we have to deal with House File 718 and some of the subsequent cuts that we're being pushed into. But I think that some of this could almost just push the can into next year more so than dealing with the problem this year. And I would hate to compound a known problem this year next year also. So my 2 cents on that.
Okay. Thank you, Mark. Yeah, Dave?
Yeah, and I agree totally with that, what Mark said. I mean, I think that's I'm for maybe adding some of this, maybe next week or whatever after we see the max, but I think, like Mark said, we're kicking that can, and we're not trying to come in line with what the state is forcing us to do, but unfortunately, that's, at some point, we're gonna have to get a little more in line with that, and, House File 718 goes for how long, and it doesn't look like it's going away, so.
Well, I do believe we had House File 718 last year, and substantial uses of these two funds were a good thing, so that we don't build up a slush fund, so to speak, for non-programmed expenses. Obviously, with the legislation, there are going to be more unintended consequences and costs next year, but we don't know exactly what that's going to look like. We do know that we have some deficits right now. So using local option sales tax towards debt service, that indirectly would lower the countywide rate from where it is, correct?
Yes, the debt service levy would go down, which would be across everyone, rural and urban.
Okay. And we don't have a challenge of identifying specific projects at this time. We could allocate a certain amount to debt service, and that could be divvied out
Yeah.
afterwards.
Afterwards, you're right, yeah.
Okay.
You mean the remaining, if you were to allocate it to make a transfer, you'd be making a transfer to debt service?
Right.
And then whatever's left, you could allocate towards other projects.
Projects.
Is that what you?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, we could do that.
And that's what occurred last year. I don't remember if it was 350 or something that went
Yeah.
to debt service.
It was over 300, yeah.
What are we short or what is our rate in debt service?
At the max where we're at right now. Okay, so our debt service right now is at 0.97574. And if you want to throw a number out, I can tell you what it will do to that.
600,000.
That would bring it down to 0.88137.
Michelle, last year from gaming, we moved 300,000 to the general supplemental fund and 300,000 to the debt service fund. And from lost, we moved 250,000. That was what was done for this fiscal year.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Ryan. Are you thinking, Matthew, taking 300 from each, put it towards debt service? Is that what you're-
Well, my next question is what planned expenses do we have out of local option sales tax? I mean, I know that typically we use it when
Yeah.
there's a project identified in the moment, but
Yeah,
we have programmed expenses here that make up our obligated funds, and I'm not aware of any
yeah,
specific needs at this time
right.
that are known.
I don't think we have any of them right now currently pending, other than what's already obligated.
The Siouxland initiative, I have not been made aware that they've submitted a letter, and I know you said last week they were
Right.
going to.
We've not received anything, correct, Karen? I think we talked, we've not received anything yet from the Siouxland Initiative. Okay. All right, thank you. So that'd be, yeah, 25,000 there.
I guess,
But oftentimes on those local option or, gaming, it's a surprise kind of deal, whether it's need a repair, need to purchase something, or a community group comes forward. I think I could probably be in favor of something in that 200,000 to 300,000 range from either fund going to those places. But I think over that, I get a little cold feet just because I just like to protect those funds for projects. But and anything that pops up, and I just say again, I think our departments are going to have to run an extremely lean budget, and we kind of saw that with conservation, with the furnace down at Browns Lake, and then the deal over at Little Sioux Park. We had to pull funds out, and I think that could be more of a general theme this coming year if they're having to tighten their budgets down even more so than they did this past year.
Yeah. I mean, I'd be in favor of just even what we did, just if we did 300 from each, 300 from gaming, 300 from loss, moving that over, either combine that over in debt service for that 600,000 and lower that debt service levy real low. I would be open for that.
the problem with assuming local option sales tax can cover projects is typically, that hasn't been done because when there's a project identified, it may not be enough. It may be a multi-year commitment, or it may be something that's, better out of CIP or something like that. So it's nice to hope that a project perfectly matches up with what we leave in there, but that's an unknown.
That's a good point.
My preference is to take this budget very seriously and to allocate $600,000 from local option sales tax for debt relief in debt service fund.
Yeah, if we do that, I would say, Mark, to your concern, we would have gaming, we'd have a decent amount in gaming to help cover some of those unknown costs that may come up this next year. So to me, I can see what you're saying, Matthew. Kind of either way, we're going to reduce by 600,000. And gaming it seems by code, gives us more options. To my limited knowledge, it seems like it gives us more options within gaming to.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, just to be clear, I was speaking only of local option
Right,
sales
correct.
tax. I'd like to allocate from
Right.
gaming as well, but
Okay.
yeah.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay. Well, thanks for that clarification. Well, if we want to, we don't have to make the decision. I think that's a good option. Mark, what you're saying, Matthew, what you're saying, I don't mind. We can wait till next week to make a decision if we want to think about it, or if we want to put something forth tonight. I would be, 600 from the one fund. That seems a little steep for me. I could say I would go maybe 400, but
I don't think there's a rush on it. I think it'd be good to, discuss it amongst ourselves and make a decision later on, so we can be specific on what we need.
Matthew, what are you thinking about out of gaming? If we did 600, what were any initial thoughts, or just so we?
Okay. You said there was 600?
There's 665, 317, right? Is that 663? Excuse me.
I think in the past, we allocated to over 6,000 numbered line items, which were equipment replacements that were already programmed across budgets. But doesn't matter if it goes to general supplemental or debt service from gaming.
If the goal is to lower the levy, correct, it can go to either one.
Mm-hmm.
Or if the new creation of a rural supplemental and you want to move more funds into that cannot be covered by increasing the levy.
Right. Well, I think if we had the creation of that levy, then we would already expense out of it as much as we could without having the need to transfer in
Right.
gaming. So I guess to make it easy, transfer into debt service is fine with me. Either one is fine with me.
Michelle,
Yes,
if I know we're short in the general supplemental, which we can raise that levy, but if we move 102 or 300,000 from local option to debt service, we could hypothetically, in my mind, we could raise general sup by near about those amounts and not raise taxes. Am I thinking about this quasi right?
we're maxed out on general supplemental right now. So if you pay into the debt service 600,000, it's gonna lower the debt service levy. Depending on what the goal is, if you're gonna increase the levy, then the increase may be less than if you had not paid in there. If you're gonna hold the levy constant, then it's gonna lower the debt service levy. And yes, we could receive more tax revenue from general supplemental, so our deficit would be less in general supplemental.
I didn't think there was a cap in general sup. I thought the caps were just in real basic and general basic.
Correct. The cap is just based on purpose. The general supplemental has to meet certain requirements in order to use it. The cap would be how much
Okay.
you would want to increase the levy by. But if you're saying you want to hold a flat tax where it's the same levy as it was last year, then you're setting your own cap based on that.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I understand now. Well, I would be in favor of moving, 300,000 of local option to debt service, and I would probably support that same amount out of gaming to the general basic. But I think I'm going to be kind of tapped out above either one of those, which I'm only 1 out of 5. But just that's kind of where I would be at.
I don't know, me just get chicken scratching here, but, there's 212,000 possibly at the, beginning of July 1st, 2025. And if we wanted to stay around that 200,000 range in gaming, 250,000 out of gaming, this time would keep us, at the end of FY '26, beginning July 1st, 2026, should be about 200,000.
The 212,000 takes into account other allocations that happen throughout the fiscal year. So there were a lot of different things that were kind of approved here and there.
Well, with that, Dave, what you were saying, what we could do is, we could do the 300,000 out of lost debt service, as Mark's suggesting, 300 out of gaming to general basic, and then, we have this next month, we can move more over. Matthew, what to maybe get, if we want to increase more to it, we can just, for tonight, move that 600,000 over to help lower the levy that's going out for the max. And then continue to look at this month and keep, seeing what potential expenditures we might have. I don't know,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think that's that's correct, but it's also the vice versa is also true. We could allocate more, and then if we somehow find all of these savings from departments over the weekend that they found, that, we could refill, so to speak,
Yeah.
local option and gaming funds. With gaming, I do agree it makes sense to have a little bit of a cushion because typically the projects we identify are smaller dollar amounts that are just kind of minor issues that it's just better just to take care of it. Still, though, just my preference, I'd like to do 400,000 out of gaming, to be a total of $1 million of non-property tax funds dedicated to tax relief in this budget, which I'm told is quite a humdinger. So like I said, I'd like to take it seriously out of the gate, and make these moves, if not, at least move something, because this mailing we have to do is anything we can do today to lessen the headache we receive is a good thing in my mind. We could always wait till next week, but if we're going to make transfers, I think we should just do that rather than explain to people, we were going to do it, and we're going to do it, and people will say, well, why is it this number? And I just don't want to have to explain that, we could have reduced that by $1 million or whatever we're going to reduce it by tonight, but we just decided to just kind of wait an extra week. That's just my preference.
No, I think there's rationale in that. I see that. Because you're right, every year, well, last year, we got a lot of phone calls on this, and emails with the max levy.
So, and I just have a quick question, and probably, Michelle, or you guys can answer it that did this last year. So we do this year, and I'm for it. I'm for transferring the money to this and to lower that. But, so say next year we don't transfer this money or do this, is it gonna be like, or we don't have that same amount? Is it gonna be surprise, hey, the levy goes way up and it's gonna be more taxes next year, or how does that work?
Do you want to answer that, Michelle? I'll let you.
Well, I think you'll be in the same spot you are right now.
I don't think it'll shoot up drastically. It will, could increase, but not. I think what you're asking, like, will be like a yo-yo effect.
Yeah.
Yes, I don't think it'll be.
Yeah, is it just
extreme.
kicking this can and then at some point it catches up to us and,
Right. Well, here's what I'll make a motion. I'd motion 300,000 from loss, 300,000 from gaming to be moved into debt service levy. So I'd.
Second.
Okay, and then I think we can continue to look at this. I think this will be good to continue to look at, so.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah, go ahead.
I'd like to just make a friendly amendment or an amendment, and if it fails, that's fine.
Sure.
I'd like to move to amend the motion to be $600,000 from lost and $400,000 from gaming.
Okay, so amendments on the, just need a second for that.
Mr. Chair, I'd be for a little bit more, but I'm probably not for that much. I don't know. I think it's what the happy medium is for me.
Okay.
So,
No, that's, all right, so not hearing a second, that amendment dies. Back to the original motion is 300,000 from loss, 300,000 from gaming to be moved to debt service. So it was motion by Bittinger, second by Nelson for that. All right, and further discussion. I do think as a board, let's continue to look at this and see. I agree with Matthew, with you. Mark and I have talked about, we need to aggressively look at debt service reduction. So with that, let's put it to the vote. So all in favor, say aye.
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 Did you say aye, Kent?
I didn't say anything.
Okay, no opposed, say nay.
I oppose.
Okay, all right. Motion passes 4-1. Carper opposing. All right, so with that, we will go to B, is the approval of the fiscal year 26 maximum county tax rates in dollars for the auditor budget statement mailing. And I'll let Michelle, if you want to just brief us on that. This is for us to approve the max levy rate that's going out tomorrow, and this max levy mailer will reflect what we just approved in the debt service reduction. So, Michelle, anything you want to mention about this, or?
I have here a copy prior to this motion of what the statement would look like.
And I'll, Michelle, we need to move to receive, correct?
Yes, please.
Yeah, all right, I'll move to receive.
Second?
All right, motion by Venger, second by Carper. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say
Aye.
nay. Motion passes 5-0.
Oops. Do this one. Okay, so this is similar to what the mailing will look like. The first thing, to just, we're on the same page as the meeting date, which we'll have to have the publication. It still needs to be published in the 3 papers, and that has to be to Karen and Heather by Thursday at 9 in the morning in order to meet the deadlines to have this published in the 10 to 20 timeframe. Looking for the date of that. Don't think I brought that. Do you have the date?
Oh,
I had emailed it to everyone.
yeah, let me just.
I don't have it entered in here because you actually have to mark it as published first. So while we're looking for that, the notice looks something like this, and last year was the first year that we had this notice. So you can see the countywide rate. See if I can find. This is the countywide rate for fiscal year 15 for urban residences. This over here is the maximum levy for the urban areas, 7.48933, which will be reduced a little bit if we put that debt service in there. And then down here is the rural area. You can see last year it was 9.52408 over here, and the max would be 9.98242. As you go down on this form, they've changed it a little bit from last year, and it's, to me, a little bit confusing because right here you can see that they're comparing $100,000 value from fiscal year 25 to a $110,000 value in fiscal year 26. And that's to account for increases in valuation. If someone owns a home that increased in value instead of just comparing 100 to 100. So we're already going to see an increase because of the valuation increase. So they're comparing this 25 property tax to what the rollback was in 25 and $100,000 residence was in 25 to a 26 residents valued at $110,000 with the 26 rollbacks and calculating a percent of change. The percent of change doesn't reflect the percent of change of our levy. So I believe this is going to be an area of confusion for individuals trying to interpret what this is going to do, and they're going to think that's going to apply it to their taxes. This bottom part they added that's different than last year, and this is a commercial property because the first $150,000 of a commercial property is taxed at a residential value, and last year they had $100,000 as the comparison. So it was exactly the same as a residential property. This year they've added 300, so you can see that 150 roll back as a residential property, and the remainder at the 90% commercial property rollback. So they did the same thing in this case where they looked at the valuation and increased it by 10%. So fiscal year 25 was a $300,000 commercial property, and fiscal year 26 is a $330,000 commercial property. So you're seeing the same situation on that. So I just wanted you guys to be aware of. Last year, when we had our public hearing, we had a couple individuals that attended that, if you remember.
Yeah.
And they had questions about the notes, and they wanted more specificity
Yes.
about the notes.
Yep.
So what I did, if you read through that, and if you want any changes, I'm more than happy to accommodate. However, we're limited on characters, and I maxed out with where I'm at there. So I tried to say where the payroll increases were, because that's the majority of our increases, specifically by amounts and percent for
Right.
each of the funds that are the levy authority funds. So that's the front page. I don't have a back page yet because we haven't produced those.
Okay.
So how many characters is that?
I don't know, but that's how many there are.
Okay, like 4 sentences.
Yeah, and I actually had to kind of reduce my characters because I went too far.
So, just for the understanding of the public here, we have a 70-something million dollar budget. What, approximate upper 70s? And we have 4 sentences to explain to our taxpayers
Good
Yeah.
point, Matthew. Good point.
Right.
what's going on here.
Right.
And this 10%, is that part of the legislation then, the requirement for this? To go up 10% on the valuation?
Well, that's, my understanding is last year it was 100 compared to 100.
yeah.
And last year there were a lot of questions and people were concerned that it wasn't reflecting valuation increases. So they decided that this would be better for the public to understand
Okay.
what's really occurring.
Yeah.
So that's just new, and that's part of the required format, yes, of
Okay.
having that. That wasn't a choice.
So next year it'll probably be a greater amount.
Or back to 100 and
Or-
100. So if you want to look, I'll pull up on my screen now another document that I've created. And I'm going to take away the 600,000 that was discussed. So we're seeing apples to apples here. So on your screens is, oh, I think I have this printed
have
out as
that
well.
printed
So
out?
I'll
Okay.
pass these down.
Sure. I'll move to receive.
Second.
Motion by Benger, second by Dietrich. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
So in this form, I've input the current max levy, which we were just looking at what it's gonna look like for the public. So we have our general basic. We are, as we've discussed before, for House File 718, the maximum we can receive is $21,615,700. And we're looking at the fiscal year 26 max column here. The general supplemental, what I've calculated is all expenses in the general supplemental fund, and that comes up to $15,268,876. The debt service, before the 600,000, we were at 6.2 million, plus a little change. Rural basic, we're limited, and the rural basic, actually, the levy has went down from last year, but we can receive 3.8 million. And then the rural supplemental is something we have not used before. I may have mentioned it. This is something that we can pay only IPERS and FICA from employees who are paid out of the rural basic fund. So that comes up to 206,300. So the total tax asking would be 47,122,000 in the maximum case scenario. If you look at column G is if we were to hold the levy constant, the amount that we would receive from taxes. So you can see that drops the general supplemental by 2.1 million. The ones that I mentioned are regulated. You can see those stay the same. And then the rural supplemental drops to 76,550 because of if we were to hold the levy constant. So if you look at the next section of this, the tax rate is what is actually going on with the tax rate. You can see the fiscal year 25 is what was levied in 25, 7.11118, and rural areas 9.52408. The middle column shows the new tax rate with the maximum amount that'll be in the notice and the rural tax rate. And then keeping the levies the same, you can see that those levy amounts are exactly the same as they were in 25. Now, the part that makes sense to me as opposed to this 100,000 is comparing 100 to 100. So if you look at your second page, and this is over on the right-hand side of the computer screen if you're looking on the computer, the first box is going to show what a $100,000 residence would be taxed if the levy is what it was in 25 versus the maximum. So in 25, if the levies were that today, that individual owning a $100,000 residence would pay $337 in taxes. If we levied the max, they'd be paying $355. Correct myself, of the county portion of their taxes. There's a lot of other authorities that are gonna play into the taxes. We're talking county portion only. I wanna be clear about that. So that is not the total taxes, it's the county portion of the taxes. So the difference in the county portion would be $17.94 without that 600,000 change that was made today. And at the bottom, you'll see the rural area. So if you're in an unincorporated township, then your county levy is higher because you're not paying into the city for the city taxes, so you're paying into the township instead. So your levy for the county is a little bit higher to pay for some of those services, such as law enforcement, secondary roads, some of those that benefit the townships and the rural area. So in that case, if we maintained a flat levy there, it would be $451 for the county portion, and it would be $473 for the max scenario, which would increase a $100,000 residence by $21 for the county portion. So that's the information to me that makes sense when individuals are trying to think about things, as opposed to saying, if it increased by 110, this is just what is your value as of January 1st of 2024. If the value of your residence is 100,000, first you apply the rollback and then you apply the levy. And per $1,000, that's what it comes out to in the two different scenarios.
So does this, on the top of the first page, account for the amount of expenses we're currently over in general basic?
No, that's the next spreadsheet,
Okay.
which I don't think I have copies for you. So you'll have to look at your screens. Okay. So this is each fund and where we began and where we are today. So general basic,
Michelle, can I interrupt real quick? Can you send this out to us later, like tomorrow or Thursday?
yes.
Okay, that's all.
Yes.
Thank you.
And I mean, I guess if you want to receive it, it's electronic, but then we can do a copy filed and post it on the website.
Sure, move to receive.
Second.
Motion by Benninger, second by Dietrich. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Thank you.
Okay, so the general basic, and okay, so this is where I looked at the budget and I said, okay, the deficit, look at your expenses and your revenue. And your deficit is, do you have enough to cover your expenses? So at the beginning Friday, before the email went out to ask departments to really look at their budgets, we were at a 3.6 plus deficit in that we had more expenses than revenue. You can see the departments here that did send responses reducing their budgets. And then there were a few errors that were found that we were able to adjust things. So at the end of today, to the best of my knowledge of what I've received from the departments, they have reduced the general basic to 2.3 million. So that's pretty good. I mean, as far as just through the weekend, there is another 104,000. Well, I don't think, this is an error. I didn't mean to have that in there. There is another 104,000 that the sheriff has requested to reduce either from general basic or general supplemental. So I haven't included that because I thought we'd see kind of where we're at to determine where it's going to be best to reduce. So if you look at the general supplemental, okay, the general basic, this deficit is taken into account. We're receiving that maximum amount of tax revenue, that 21 point some million that we can receive. So that's taken that into account. When we look at the next section, this general supplemental, our beginning deficit, that's our total amount of expenses versus revenue before we have any tax revenue. So the first line there, that $13 million is the tax revenue if we were to hold the levy flat. So the same as last year overall. So this is the number that actually would increase a little bit by decreasing that debt service. So if the revenue from the taxes increases, then our deficit is going to be a little bit less. So that 600,000 is going to impact this line. These are reductions that the departments made. Had some other things going on in there, but we did have reductions that affected the general supplemental. So we're in a deficit of 1.4 if we hold the levy flat. Now, if you chose to increase the levy, this property tax number is going to go up, so we can make that be a balanced budget, but you're balancing it by increasing taxes. Any questions about that part? Then we go to the rural basic. This is limited, so your beginning deficit here is based on receiving the limited amount that we can get from tax revenue. We do have some cuts that the departments have volunteered to make here, and so our ending deficit there is a little bit less than the rest. But you can see here that I have 76,550 put in there for an auditor's transfer, which can go to this new rural supplemental for IPERS and FICA. That number in our maximum levy amount, if you look at that sheet, is I'm not sure if it's on that sheet, but it's 200 and something.
206,300.
Yes,
Yep.
206,300. So, which means that if you were to increase levies, we have $206,000 in FICA and IPERS that could be paid out of rural supplemental that actually would reduce this, which would make the rural basic positive actually in the good, but it would, we would have to increase in order to make this net zero for the rural supplemental. So that's where we're at. Beginning balance, considering holding a flat tax would be 5.39. Oh, something's wrong with this formula because we've had like over $1 million.
Yeah, we've had 1.4.
But this ending balance, right now, if you add up all of the deficits that's remaining, we're at 3.8 in reductions needed in order to not dip into the reserves. So these amounts that are in these yellow boxes, if nothing were done, and this is where you wanted the levies to stay, these would have to come from reserves, which we know that our reserves in general basic are low, and so taking another 2 million out of the reserves is
Correct.
not the best. So that's,
So this 3.887, that's before the 600,000 from earlier? Would this number then be 3.2?
You're looking at where,
I'm looking at the amount you said, we have this $3,887,000 spread.
okay, yes.
So that's before we did
Yes.
600,000, correct?
Yes.
So that is now 3.2.
So I think what we need to do here is to add it to this area. I'm gonna double check this work when I go back, but
Well, it wouldn't be 3.2, it'd be 3.5 because 300,000 went to debt service, which is not a deficit. It would be, the deficits are general sup and general basic and a little bit in rural basic.
It did go down, though.
It did go to 3.2 in the spreadsheet.
it's all going to debt service, which means that we can get 600 more in rural supplemental. So I increased that by 600, but like I said, I want to go back and look at it closer.
Correct. Okay.
I'm not quite of the dentist mindset that I can.
Okay. One thing I'll say is thank you to.
What are,
Go ahead, Mark.
in our tax asking that we're going to mail out, have we raised the levy for general supplemental, or are we trying to hold it the same as last year? Because I think we should try to maximize that, raise it as high as we can to cover any shortcomings for the tax asking, and then we can chip away at it later.
It is maximum in the notice that we're mailing out. So the mail out one would be the 7.48933 for the countywide and 9.98242. However, I'll add the 600 in there so that may change a little bit.
Thank you.
Yep. One thing I'll say is thank you to all our officials and department heads for working on that over the weekend, looking for cost savings reductions. I appreciate that. I know the board does. We know you guys work hard and budget well, and thank you for giving an extra look over on that. And so I know the citizens appreciate that very much. Michelle, thank you for your work on this, and Ryan, working and learning. But thank you, Michelle, for your hard work on this and getting this. This is good information in good format, too. Very usable format. So yeah, so once again to the public, right, this is the max. I wish this mailer would say at top of it, last year I had one of our citizens says, notice of public hearing, proposed property tax levy. It said it's proposed property max tax levy. And so I wish that form would be changed because it really is just the max. So hopefully, if everyone's listening, watching on YouTube, just please be advised, this is the max, not the final. This is, as we've said, if worst case scenario. But with that, any other questions, or Michelle, is there anything else you need from the board? I know we need to move to approve this. For you to send that mailer out. We don't want to rush anything. If anybody has any other questions. And once again, to the public that's listening, it's just this is the max. And if any questions, please reach out to the supervisors. And as always, please be courteous in your questions if you call in. Yeah.
To approve this, since there has been the change, if you can just approve it with the 600,000 reduction in the debt service levy, and if you would like that shifted to the general supplemental for the max allowed, then I can make those changes. And that will be, just for your information, those data files get pulled tomorrow at 4 o'clock is the deadline for this to be prepared, and then those will go to the mailing company. They will prepare those, and they are to be mailed out by the end of next week, I asked, and they should be in the taxpayer hands by the 20th. I saw you over here. Did you find that date?
I texted you
Okay.
the dates. I just. Yep. Is that what? That's what I
Okay,
found.
yeah, so 3/13 will be the public hearing for this. Oh, sorry. Yes, yes, I have to publish it by then. Thank you,
Yeah.
Karen. Too many.
Sorry, just,
No, you're
just a clarifying question on this mailer. So if someone reads this and they say, according to this, I mean, before the changes, this is saying the urban taxpayer is paying 18.48% more in property tax for the county, is that correct?
And my answer would be, no, that's not exactly correct. They're taking into account a valuation increase of 10%.
Right.
And they're comparing last year's rollback and this year's rollback, which are different. So that is not, I can work up some numbers, I think, that I can send out, that if you receive calls, that you guys will have that information that might help.
I'm just trying to understand. I'm not sure I can even explain to a constituent why the department made this change and why it's helpful. Because
Right.
if you're looking at $100,000 and you want to see how much you're changed, you want to look at the same $100,000.
Correct.
This is only applicable to someone whose house went up exactly 10%.
Right.
If your house went up 15 or 5%, this 18.48 or whatever it is after our changes means nothing. It's not true.
Right. That's correct.
This is false information.
Right.
That's just preposterous.
No. Good. Very correct observation.
I mean, if it was 110 and 110, someone could say, okay, my home is 220, so I'll double it.
Right.
But if you're comparing it to a different valuation from the prior year,
Right.
again, it's assuming it's this whole one-size-fits-all approach from Des Moines, where everyone's got to have the same levy maxes, we have to have the same, everyone in our entire county has the same exact property valuation increase of 10%, and it's just not true.
Right.
So we're sending out literally false information by state law, as it applies to people individually receiving this.
Yep.
Well, I don't understand why they don't have the rollback figured either. I mean, that's another thing that's Matthew. I mean, you're spot on, Matthew. This letter that's going to go out is trash.
Right. Well, the rollback, I don't think the rollback has to be, that's not factored into later, correct? Isn't it later in session, right? Or is it already been
No,
factored in?
the rollback's been determined. Those are issued around October.
Okay, excuse me.
So
okay.
the rollback, yeah, and they're different every year, and so.
So what, you're right, so why would that's a good question. Why would that not be calculated into this? If it's
Well, the
already known?
rollback is calculated into this. If you look at my spreadsheet, or the one that I had up on the screen for my proposed, it was 391 and 521,
So that's in,
which is the
thought-
fiscal year 26 scenario. So I'll bring that back up again here. You can see,
right, you have it, but is it in here, Michelle? You're saying, did I miss that? I apologize if I missed it, but you're, in this flyer, that's in here? Is that calculated into this? Do you know? Or no?
the rollbacks?
Yeah, the
Yeah,
rollbacks.
the rollbacks are included, but the 25 rollback is on the 25 year, the 26 is on
Okay.
the 26
Okay.
year.
Oh, okay. I misunderstood. I thought you said that this flyer going out had the 25 rollback for the 26 year. So that's why
Okay.
I was really starting to get mad.
No, the 25 is on the 25 year.
Okay.
The 26 is on the 26 year, but the biggest difference is the 26 year is based on a $110,000 valuation, and the 25 is the $100,000 valuation.
Well, that's good. That's,
I think that if I change this, you'll see those same numbers on the 26 that I came up with.
okay.
So, oh. Maybe,
Well,
maybe.
even
maybe
with
not.
that, even though it's in there, it's still not
Yeah.
correct information,
Yes,
so it regrets.
yes.
Okay. Well, with that, I'll make that motion. Michelle, you said the motion needs to say 600,000 to debt service. And then, so can you say that again? Just, I'll make that motion.
Yeah, just you want me to adjust the general supplemental based on the $600,000 reduction in debt service to be the maximum,
Correct.
correct? Is
Yes,
that
yeah,
your will?
yeah.
Okay.
That's the motion, yeah. So motion to approve the tax levy. Max.
Well, isn't it 300,000 in debt service and 300,000 in general basic?
No, it was all
Yeah,
debt service,
It was
Mark.
both debt service, 300 from gaming and 300 from lost to debt service.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yep. So I'll make that motion to approve that with the 600,000 to debt service, yeah. To be reflected in general supplemental. So, move it. Need a second?
Second.
Motion by Benjer, second by Dietrich. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, say nay. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you, Michelle. All right, with that, on to any reports on committee meetings. If there is any.
I have none.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, I have none from last week. Okay. All right, on to citizens' concerns. If any citizens' concerns?
Hi, my name is Robin Shiro. I live at 311 East Washington Street in Elk Point. I realize I asked you for your help before because I couldn't get a hold of the sheriff to meet with him to tell him about some crimes that are occurring in our communities. The reason being is that these crimes, these terrorists have breached Homeland Security. They committed human trafficking, racketeering, murder, kidnapping, torture, rape, grand larceny, forgery, fraud, and many other crimes in your area. I know that I live in Union County, but I worked 2 years during these crimes for Nutriflow. I worked in your county. I worked for CF Industries as a consultant. I worked for Tyson, also in your county, so for 2 years. So I realized that maybe he's dragging his feet to talk to me, the sheriff, about these crimes because I live in Union County, but because some of them, such as racketeering and others, they cross county lines. And so I think he doesn't understand the severity of these crimes that are occurring. I would like to, and you don't have to take them into accept them, but I would
Oh, yeah.
like to at least show you.
Well, let me, the chair will take those first, yeah, and I'll determine, yeah. No, you're all right. That's all right.
This is just the severity of some of the torture crimes that I can attest to.
All right.
So if you could please let him know that these crimes that are occurring in your area as well as Union County are really severe and need to be addressed. They're ongoing, they have been ongoing. Some of them I am witness to for the last 12 years, and this needs to stop. He needs to take ownership for his position as an elected official in charge as a sheriff. I appreciate again all that you do because I was a previous county commissioner, so thank you for all that you do.
Thank you. All right. Any other citizens, any comments? All right. Hearing none, moving on to board concerns. Any board concerns?
I would just like to say that if you need an Excel pro, Ryan is your guy. He's like knows a lot about working in that system and doing crazy stuff that I couldn't imagine. So I've had him show me a few tricks, and I'm looking forward to learning more from him.
It's great to hear.
So I had a phone call from, oh, go ahead, Mark.
Are you sure, Dave? You can go ahead.
Actually, I had a phone call from a head bus driver of a school, and just thanking basically Laura and the secondary roads, so they are going to prioritize bus routes. So that was a good call to hear, and, you know, for her to take that back, and Jamie Amy called and got them out there. So looking out for the safety of our kids, and I am a bus driver, but I just fill in here and there. I don't drive a route, but I've actually seen, had bus drivers back up 2 miles over the hills on the gravel, so I appreciate that.
Well, we need a bus route we've been talking about, so.
I never should have let that out.
No, you shouldn't have.
I motion to
Let's
approve.
have that back on the agenda
Yeah.
next week, Mr. Chair.
Sure,
Sound
and I'll
good?
put it on there, maybe buy a bus out of gaming, right? We can
Yeah,
get our own
yeah,
bus. I hear that wisdom. Yes, we'll get that on the agenda. All right. Anything else? Mark, you had something?
Yeah, so Matthew made a comment earlier about Des Moines wanting to take a one-size-fits-all approach to property taxes in counties, and they obviously did that with House File 718, and I think our services are going to suffer here because of that. But today, the Senate Commerce Committee, a subcommittee actually had a hearing on Senate File 376, which looks to set a one-size-fits-all ordinance for wind and solar for the whole state of Iowa. So basically, any county ordinances would become null and void,
Right.
and the state would dictate county zoning. And so I put a comment on the legislative website regarding this bill yesterday. Matthew Young did as well. And I checked this morning, and I couldn't believe how many Woodbury County residents I saw also had shared comments. And so I was really impressed by just the number of people. And I would encourage some of you guys to go through and look. I don't think there's a single comment that says, pass this thing. It did pass unanimously. It'll go to committee hearing on Thursday. But it was just, I'm so proud of the Woodbury County residents, defending local government and small government. So I'm much appreciative to them and for Matthew's comment. And, we're, as elected officials, whether it's this or the carbon pipeline or whatever, we are doing everything we can to protect the rights and freedoms of our constituents here. And it's really frustrating that we have to do that. And it's disheartening, but I just want to thank anybody that's listening and anybody that, supplied comments or will continue to comment. Doyle Turner was down there today. He's going to be down there again on Thursday for the committee hearing. Rocky DeWitt is on the Commerce Committee, and so you could sure give Rocky a call. I think he is not supportive of this bill, which we appreciate that very much, but I'm sure he could use some support. So anyway, I wanted to pass that along and say thank you to our residents for being plugged in. The last thing I'll leave everybody with is I will not be attending the LEC meeting next week. It's at 2 o'clock in the courthouse, and then I will not be at the Board of Supervisors meeting either at 4:30. I'm going to have a plan procedure done this Thursday, and I'm going to be laid up for a week, 10 days. So I'll send an email out to some department heads and stuff. I was hoping to yet today, but having some technology issues with my laptop. But I'll be sending that out. But just if you wondering where I'm at next week, I would much rather be with you guys, but I'm going to be laid up at home for a little while. So appreciate all the work, Michelle and Dan and Ryan, and we'll get to the bottom of this budget, but it's not going to be pretty. So thank you.
Thank you, Mark. The only thing I have is this coming up Wednesday, I'll be in Des Moines talking with our representatives regarding this recent bill from yesterday, eminent domain, House File 718, asking for the repeal of that. So if there's any board or any of our elected officials, any concerns, anybody you want me to talk to or take any in-person notes or comments, please email those to me. But I'll be spending my Wednesday up there with that. So anyhow, with that, if there's no other board comments,